My name is Shannon Calloway, and I will be doing John Dewey, founder, University of Chicago Laboratory Schools, subject of study, philosophy of education and progressive education. An American philosopher and educator who was a co-founder of the philosophical movement known as pragmatism, a pioneer in functional psychology and the innovative theories of democracy, and a leader of the progressive movement in education in the United States. Dewey believed that human beings learn through a hands-on approach. This places Dewey in the educational philosophy of pragmatism. Pragmatists believe that reality must be experienced. From Dewey's educational point of view, this means that children must interact with their environment in order to adapt and learn. Dewey was born October 20, 1859, to Archibald Dewey and Lucinda Artisma Rich in Burlington, Vermont. He was the third of the couple's four sons, one of whom died as an infant. Dewey died June 1, 1952, at the age of 92 in New York, New York. His mother, the daughter of a wealthy farmer, was a devout Calvinist. His father, who was a merchant, left his grocery business to become a Union Army soldier in the Civil War. Dewey's father shared his passion for British literature with his offspring. After the war, Dewey's father became the owner of a tobacco shop, which allowed his family to have a comfortable life and financial stability. Growing up, Dewey attended Burlington Public Schools, excelling as a student. When he was just 15 years old, he enrolled at the University of Vermont, where he particularly enjoyed studying philosophy under the leadership of H.A.P. Torney. Dewey graduated only 2 years later. Early professionalism and family life. Dewey also attended the University of Vermont and Johns Hopkins University. His teaching career, the fall after Dewey graduated, his cousin helped him land a teaching job at the seminary located in Oil City, Pennsylvania. Only 2 years later, though, his cousin resigned as principal of the seminary, causing Dewey to lose his position also. After being laid off, Dewey went back to Vermont and started teaching at a private school. During his free time, he read philosophical treatises and discussed them with his former teacher, Torrey. Soon, he developed a huge fascination with the topic, which led Dewey to decide to take a break from teaching to study philosophy and psychology at Johns Hopkins University. George Sylvester Morris and G. Stanley Hall were among the teachers who influenced Dewey the most. His university employment included, upon receiving his doctorate from Johns Hopkins University in 1884, Dewey was hired as an assistant professor at the University of Michigan. There is where he met the love of his life, Harriet Alice Chapman. The two then got married in 1886. Over the course of their marriage, they would give birth to 6 children and adopt 1 child. In 1888, Dewey and his family left Michigan for the University of Minnesota, where he became a professor of philosophy. However, within a year, they chose to return to the University of Michigan, where Dewey taught for the next 5 years. By 1894, Dewey had been made head of the philosophy department at the University of Chicago. He remained there until 1904 and also served as the director of School of Education for 2 years. Dewey left Chicago in 1904 to join the Ivy League, becoming a professor of philosophy at Columbia University while also working at the Teachers College part-time. In 1930, Dewey retired from his teaching career and left the university while still holding his title of Professor Emeritus. His wife, Harriet, passed away 3 years prior. Theory and development. Dewey believed that the goal of education was to create relative quality education in a child-centered learning. He was against passive education. He believed that the culmination of anti-curriculum, written memorization, and spectator learning. Dewey felt like that children should be involved in their learning and that the old way of learning where children were taught to memorize things didn't work anymore. Dewey was a pragmatist. Pragmatists value education as products of a learner's effort and experience and recognize knowledge for content mastery while interacting with a learning goal. Theory and practice continue. Creating engaging learning begins with the learner of the teacher. Design a curriculum to eliminate insignificant knowledge not related to learner's purposes for his life. Dewey felt like that the children should be engaged at all times with their teaching during their learning process. Select engaging learning experiences connected to prior experiences and knowledge that applies to relating the problem to prior knowledge. Children should be able to relate to what they've previously learned, forming ways to solve problems with specific learning outcomes for each. Children should be able to form ways to work through their problems and allow learners to test the hypotheses by exploring to verify learning outcomes. Students should be able to test what they've learned and be able to prove it while also working with others. Perspectives in diversity. Dewey believed that creating growth in the intellect of children comes from exposure to their interests of the learners that have power in culture and are relevant to their socioeconomic domain. Dewey also gave recognition to the cultural shift of urban Americans along with the widening gap between the educational relevance of curriculum as well as the needs of learners. Dewey generated content goals that learners can perceive as valuable while help increasing communication and action of knowledge attained within their social and cultural environment. Dewey believed that children's socioeconomic status and were in their environment had a great impact on their learning experiences also. Some of Dewey's major works include him writing over 40 books. One of them was Democracy in Education. It was an introduction to the philosophy of education in his first major work, which was published in 1916. Another one of his works was Human Nature and Conduct. It was an introduction to social psychology, and it was published in 1922. A third of his work was Art and Experience, which was published in 1934, and it was also a major work of his. Some of his great influencers include George Sylvester Morris and G. Stanley Hall were among the teachers who influenced Dewey the most. In 1884, Dewey began teaching philosophy and psychology at the University of Michigan. There, his interest gradually shifted from the philosophy of Greg Wilhelm Friedrich Hegel to the new experimental psychology being advanced in the United States by G. Stanley Hall and the pragmatist philosophy and psychologist William James. In 1946, Dewey, then 87, married to a widow named Grant. Following their marriage, the Deweys lived off of Roberta's inheritance and Dewey's books royalty. On June 1st, 1952, Dewey, a lifelong supporter of education reform and defenders' rights of every man, died of pneumonia at the age of 92 in the couple's apartment in New York, New York. Some of the learning that Dewey has that relates to learning now in the current learnings that we do is problem-based learning. Problem-based learning consists of giving students problems and allowing them to be able to work the problems out and learn from their work that they do in the process of working the problems out. Differentiated learning, which consists of different types of learnings that applies to different students based on their learning needs. Dewey felt like that all children did not learn the same, and that sometimes they needed other direct learning strategies that will be particular catered to them. Formative assessments, as well as informative assessments that are given today. Self-reflection practices also.